All right, good evening. My name is Stephen Nadabato, and on behalf of Crossroads Cultural Center, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's panel entitled Old Age as a Time of Grace, ? Caring for the Elderly in the 21st Century. In a special way, old age is a time of grace. The elderly have the ability to understand the most difficult of situations. Pope Francis reminds us here that with their wisdom acquired through life experience, the elderly are a gift to society. Having walked the journey of life longer than the rest, they serve as guides and points of reference, illuminating our way forward on our journeys. However, as they age, their need for care increases, and they are often left alone. The Pope continues, the reality is that the elderly are often discarded with an attitude of abandonment. As Christians and as citizens, we are called to envision, with imagination and wisdom, ways of facing this challenge. This attitude leads us to falsely regard those who are most vulnerable and in need of our support as useless or burdensome. How can we heed Pope Francis's call to foster a society that places both the wisdom of the elderly and caring for their needs above the ideal of economic gain and efficiency? Through this event, we will hear from two women who work with the elderly on a daily basis, and who will share with us how through their work they gain much more than they give. Thumbelina NEWSOME is the owner of Joy Cometh in the Morning, LLC, which is an adult daycare center in Newark, New Jersey. Her mission at the Adult Daycare Center is to bring awareness regarding the forgotten senior population and how important they are to the community. And Regina KASUN is a nurse practitioner who works in a geriatric house calls program in Northern Virginia, where she lives with her family. Please join me in welcoming Thumbelina NEWSOME.
Thank you. So what an honor, Steve. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the opportunity tonight. I feel honored. So I am the owner of Joy Cometh in the Morning Adult Daycare, and actually my mom started the daycare 9 years ago, and 3 years ago I purchased it from her because I felt like it was a diamond in the rough, and that I wanted to carry out the legacy. I had come from corporate America, where I was a senior buyer for a pharmaceutical company. And talk about purpose. You know, a lot of people think about, over the course of your life, you think about purpose. Should I really be doing this? Does it really bring me joy? Everybody's been to that place at some point in their life, and it really didn't bring me joy. It didn't do anything for me. It just gave me a lot of money that meant nothing. It really didn't. It was meaningless. So it was a no-brainer to take over the daycare and purchase it from my mom. But what I got from it was way more than I could have ever imagined, ever. I remember back in 2014, my grandmother had passed away of cancer, my dad's mom. And I remember, she was 81 years old. I remember looking into her casket and saying to myself, I wonder if she knew why she was sent to earth. I wonder, did she ever accomplish all of the things that she wanted to do? And I'm like, if she didn't, I don't want to be like that. I didn't want that for myself. And that's the thing about purpose, right? Sometimes you're like, this is a huge thing that I believe in, and I've heard this saying before. When God sent you to earth, He sent you to earth with your future trapped inside of you. Your job is to get it out. And I'm a firm believer in that. I knew that there was something in me. I could tell that there are people all around the world who feels the same way. There's something inside of me. I just don't know what it is. I don't think I should be doing this. The voice, I call it God. You may call it energy. You may call it the universe. It's always speaking. Always. The question is, are you listening to it? Do you listen to it? So when you know, I got the call to take over the daycare, I was going to purchase it from my mom. I had to listen to the voice of God. Like, is this something I really wanted to do? Listen, you're not going to get a lot of money, which I didn't care about. And I'm like, and you get to make people happy. Okay, go for it. And worst case scenario, you can always quit. Go back to corporate America. It's easy, right? But when I got there, it was something totally different. When I got to see seniors, even though I've been in it all of my life, because my mom has been in the industry for about 30 or 40 years. So seeing it, growing up, I've already had a passion for people and children, and I just have a passion for people, always, all of my life. I'm very touchy-feely, just in case you see me touchy-feely. So when I thought about purpose, right? So I took the job. My husband at the time, I told him, I'm going to buy the company and I'm going to do this. Well, he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So 2 years ago, he passed away. So could you imagine him dying and you trying to find your purpose? Not good. It didn't feel good. But I still knew it was the right thing to do. And it taught me an incredible lesson, even through death. Follow and listen to the voice. You have to cancel out all of the other background noise. So, you know, he encouraged me to do it, but it was tough because I have 3 children. So that was a tough time, but we managed to make it through. Not only that, did I get to go through that whole experience of watching another human being die, it gave me even more compassion because I know that seniors don't have long. So it gave me something else and something different to even think about, something more that I can give. You know, so at our center, it's super small for now, we're growing, but I get to bring people joy every single day and it costs me nothing. Oh my God, what a great gift from God that I get to say, good morning, oh my God, I get to be me. And you don't know how liberating that is, that you find your purpose in being you. And I could be the best me, better than anybody else that you can be in the world. I get to be me, and it's great. And guess what? It transforms lives. Like you wouldn't believe it transforms lives. You know, just saying good morning. And me, I'm the type, because I'm touchy-feely, I may just go to them and hug them. Changes their whole day. Changes their whole, good morning, my pumpkin, my baby, how are you? And they're like, oh, you know. But if you think about it, people who are aging, right? Their spouses die. I know what that pain feels like. And I'm young, you know. So imagine them being married 40, 50, 60 years and the spouse died. That's like a whole part of your being gone along with you. And some of you in here have experienced that. But that's like somebody taking off the other side of your body. And I know that to be true. So think about that. You're already aging. Your kids are grown. Your grandchildren are grown. Nobody cares. It feels like that. It feels like that. But there's somebody named Thumbelina NEWSOME who does. I care. So I just think this, not only am I carrying out a legacy, but I can't even express or explain what this has done to me and how it's changed my life. And you know, there's this saying that I heard Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer, he said, and you guys will understand this. Think about the sun. Think about the sun and how it shines and all of the great benefits it has. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Think about that. Think about the sun. It changes the melanin in your skin. It gives us food, light, sunlight, and all it does is shines. It never asks for anything. It never once told the earth, you owe me. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to shine. But you know what? Because people who work in corporate, not knocking anybody, like myself, you get bombarded with life and money and things and cars and houses, stuff that's meaningless. You can't even take this stuff with you when you go. It's meaningless. It means nothing. And now knowing that Dave passed away, it's even more meaningless. So our only job is to shine. It's like people say, well, how do I let people know? Listen, I consider myself a lamp. Lamps don't have to talk. They shine. Right? That's what we do. We shine, and that's what it's about. So imagine bringing that sunlight into somebody who's sitting in a world of darkness. Seniors are the most forgotten population. They sit at home. They don't have the resources. They don't know how to use the internet. They barely know how to use a regular landline, let alone a flip phone. You know, think about that. They're in pain. Their bodies are riddled with pain. They don't have anybody to talk to, nobody to call, and they're sitting in senior citizen buildings with other seniors who are struggling just like them. What does it take for any one of us to just go and visit them? A grandmother, an aunt, an uncle, just go and visit and say hi. It brings them joy. It changes the dynamics of their life just by being kind. Just by opening your heart and letting your light shine. I'm super big, and now that I've been liberated into this new world of being me and bringing joy, it's like my whole world is upside down, and I enjoy every waking moment of it. I actually get to enjoy being who God created me to be. And it's invigorating. And I get to share it with the world. I get to share it with the world. So, you know, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our senior center and what we do. So we have seniors who just have, like, you know, pain, you know, like high cholesterol. Then we have people who have dementia, who have Alzheimer's. We also service individuals who are developmentally disabled as well. So what our clients who have dementia, we provide like doll baby therapy. Believe it or not, I had a doll baby who I paid. I'm a little, woohoo, okay, you can hear it now, right? So I was a doll collector, right? A doll collector. And I paid a lot of money for this doll. I mean, a lot of money for this doll because, woohoo, like I said, right? So, and I said, I had it in my garage and I said, wouldn't it be a great idea to calm the mind of somebody who's restless? Because when you have dementia, your mind is thinking, oh, I don't know, I don't know where I am and I don't know what's going on. I just know something's wrong. So I give them I bought this baby and it weighs 8 pounds. It took 8 months for her to be made. Each part of her hair is was put in one at a time. So again, woohoo, I'm a little, but I'm so glad I had this doll made because I was able to bring it in. And somebody, one of my clients, she was restless. She came in, she was confused, she's starting to cry because, I don't know, the mind is gone. I said, well, look at that, can you watch my baby for me, please? I have so much work to do. And she goes, well, why would you bring that baby in here? And did you change the diaper? Did you do this? And I said, honey, I need you to take care of this baby for me, child. I gotta work. So I give her the baby and all of a sudden, you see peace. You see her calm. Oh, I need to take you. And then she starts, and then not only does it calm her down, it triggers her memory. I remember when my kids were little and what I did, and this is how you have, that's what we want. That's what I want to do. I wanted, even if it took a little doll baby to trigger her memory. And guess what? It cost me nothing. It really cost me a lot of money. It cost me nothing to take it out of the garage and bring it to her. So now, when I see them restless coming in the door, and I'm like, oh, go get the baby. And I'm like, listen, girl, I need help today. Oh, I hope it's not that baby again. I said, yeah, it's that baby. I need you to watch my kid for me. And she says, this is the last time, and you need to hire a sitter. I said, you're the grandma. I need you to help a sister out over here. So it's great that we get to offer that. And so, mind you, we play brain games where we stimulate the brain. So I'm going to show you a little bit. So really quick, I want you to throw out. Give me 10 cars. I don't even think there are 10 cars. 10 names, male names with the letter B. Go.
Bob.
Butch.
Brian.
Bob. Brian.
Bill.
Bob.
Barry.
Barry.
Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Brandon.
Brandon.
Barry.
Barry.
I said Barry. Brian.
Barack. Barack. Who else? That's right. Who else? Come on. Anybody?
Blaine.
Blaine. Blaine. I like it.
Bobby.
Bobby.
Buck.
Buck.
Billy.
Billy.
Bo.
Bo.
Brandon.
Brandon.
Brendan.
Brandon. Think about what it's doing for your mind. That little tiny exercise, it was fun. And they come up with names from like 1925. And it's like, oh, that's a great name. Good for you. So imagine what that does. Just that little bit of time. We're just playing the game. We do people and cars. We stimulate the brain. But we do it in such a fun way that whether you have dementia or not, everybody can play along. You see how simple that was? So we do that. We also do, because we're small and we get to do this. So say if one of my individual had a surgery and she has to go into therapy, you know, like a rehabilitation center. I call the rehabilitation center and I say, hey, I'm the owner of Joy Cometh in the morning that she attends. We would like to come and visit her. Can I borrow a room? They said, sure. I said, but tell her it's a surprise. So we go in, they give us the room, they wheel her in backwards and they turn her around. Surprise! All of your friends from your adult daycare is there. And guess what happens to her? She comes out 6 weeks earlier because we brought healing. Not only did we bring healing to her, imagine the seniors who rode in the van to come and check her out. They felt like they've given back to the community. Now they're out in the street and they're doing missionary work through what we do. Does this make sense to you guys? How important it is. And it's small things. Just be creative. It doesn't cost us nothing. Gas. I mean, It costs you nothing. Really, think about it. Missionary work. So now they're giving back, and the person feels like somebody's thinking of me. Then we get the phone calls from the family. Oh my God, my mom won't shut up. She keeps telling us, and she called my aunt in North Carolina, and she's telling, they all came to see me. Triggered joy. We triggered joy. So it's little things like that. We do arts and crafts, of course. You know, we play bingo, Pekino, arts and craft to help strengthen the motor skills. We also partner with Nike. So Nike comes in about once, sometimes twice a month. They don't care what your disabilities are or what your age is. They say, just do it, which is Nike's slogan. They come in and they work us out. They give us a whole bunch of things, and we have like a Nike champion at the end. We play games. But every 6 months, Nike allows us to come in. They open up an hour early just for us. And what they do is they have special special staff that come in and measure their feet and everything and give us sneakers for like 15 to 20 bucks. So that the seniors feel like we went shopping, and sometimes they might buy a shirt for $3 or $5. But they felt like, you know what? They opened up just for us. We feel special. So little things like that. Another thing too, we partner with St. Benedict's Prep. St. Benedict's Prep is an all-boys school, high school, and I met Steve through the Community Service Project, where these boys come to, he sends about 4 to 5 guys a year, and they come and they work for me for 30 days. They do not report to their classroom. We become their classroom. And I teach them public speaking because they have to stand in front of the seniors. I teach them how to run a program, how to be activity coordinator, how to be an activity director. We teach them how to serve. Because don't forget, a lot of the young people today, their grandmothers are young, and sometimes the grandmothers live in another state because they could afford, it's cheaper to live out there. So these young boys, they come in not knowing. They're thinking, oh, we got to go feed old people today. Well, my clients would tell you, honey, I'm 75 years old and I'm not old, so don't tell, you know. So they get to see all of these sassy mouth, you know, people. And what it does is, one guy, his name is Toby. And at the end of our community service project, I always sit them in the front like this. And I said, is there anything you want to say? Or is there anything that the clients would like to say to them? Most of the seniors say, we're so proud of you guys. You brought us joy. Every day I couldn't wait to wake up to see you guys come in because I knew you were going to dance or do something silly for us today or sing or just whatever. And they said that the seniors would tell them, you really changed my life. But the boys would say, no, I think you guys got it twisted. You guys have changed our lives. And Toby said that his grandmother had passed away. And he was crying. And he said, and I never acknowledged the death. He said, I was known as, people would say, what's your name? And I would say, her grandson. He said, that's how close he was with his grandma. And he said that being here triggered all of that for him, the loss. Because he never talked to his mom about it. He never talked to anybody about it. And he said, I catered to Miss Beatrice all the time because she looks just like my grandma. And I felt like I was serving her. And he said, I can't even tell you how I feel relieved that I know that my grandma's proud because I see her, she's here. And like this young guy is crying. Not only that, by the time we get to the next kid and the next kid, everybody's crying, even the singers. And I'm like, what is going on in here, you know? But we're not just having an adult daycare for fun and triggering memory. We're changing lives. It's therapeutic, and it's not just therapeutic for the seniors, it's therapeutic for the people who are servicing them. You know, we are called to serve. Just like that example I just said, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Sometimes you have to question yourself, how am I operating? Am I operating out of my lower self, which is your ego, which I hate? Or are you operating out of your higher self, which is the divine? And you will know how you're operating because your lower self will say, what can I get out of this? What am I getting? Your higher self, the divine, will say, how can I serve? So if your mind is not saying, how can I serve? I challenge you today to change your mind. Change your mind. Think about the seniors. Think about people who are older than you. Even if you feel like, hey, I'm a senior, so what? You can still call another senior just like we do. We get up, all of these seniors, we go and visit another senior. Nobody's excluded from love. Nobody's excluded from serving. And you don't stop serving until the day you're dead. That's just how it goes. God has called everybody. You know, in the Bible it talks about many are called, few are chosen. Well, the people who are chosen are the ones who answered the call. And I'm telling you today, answer your call. There's something bigger and greater than you. You can feel it, you know it, you just won't move out of fear, out of love of ego, out of love of money. All of that stuff is meaningless. It means nothing. And especially if you're saving it and you're doing stuff for yourself, that's ego. God is not pleased with that. That's ego. And when you walk around this earth and realize that the life you live is not about you, it's not about you. It's really, I can't even tell you how many times I have to repent and tell God, whenever I made it about me, forgive me. I'm sorry that I made something about me. It's not about me. I'm here for you. I am here to serve. And I feel like I'm called because I was able to surrender and sacrifice everything that I love. Give it up freely. Money, my husband, my children, they don't belong to me. My family, they don't belong to me. They are given to us just to steward after. They're not yours. They don't belong. So we harbor, and then when they have to go, because everybody has to go. Everybody has to go, whether you like it or not. But how did you live? What's your legacy? What are you leaving behind? What would they say about you at your funeral service? What would they say? Oh, he was a snob. He was this. He was mean. He was that. What would somebody say at your service? I think that's important. Or at your service, would they do like this? This is all I can say about her. She lived for God. She lived the way God would want. She had the heart of God. He had the heart of God. That's important. It's the legacy you leave behind. And don't forget about our seniors, because to me, people are like, oh, you're so young. You don't have to do this. You could do this and you could do that. Excuse me, those are my ancestors. I am who I am because of you guys, because of them. I am nothing. Listen, the towns we live in, senior citizens were young when they bought it, and they paid taxes on those homes and did all of these things, and we take it for granted. Like, oh, we're not paying for that house, we're not helping. How do you think you are who you are today? Those companies you work for, people who are retired, are those people who built that company. You forgot. But that's what happens when you get messed up with ego. Ego is the worst thing you could have. And you'll know if you're walking in purpose if you can cancel out your ego. Wanting people to think something about you that you're not. And because I've been invigorated and I've been liberated, I've been liberated for real, that I get to be me. I can't tell you how refreshing it is to walk in the skin that you're in and to be who you are, no matter what. I could sit next to a CEO and be Thumbelina. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to respect me just like I respect them. And I still get to be me and get to show love. You know, I was telling my friend Calvin on the way, I'm so touchy-feely, I'm all in the car like, grow up! What are you doing? But I get to be me. I get to be me. And I'm telling you, you free yourself. People who are wondering, I know that I need this. I know I'm not happy where I am. Free yourself. God, what do you want me to do? I'm here for you. Forgive me. Forgive me. Because maybe I made a mess out of all of this. You've given me so much that I didn't do the right things with it. Forgive me. I need to know what you need me to do. I need to find other ways to give back. What am I doing? If you think about it, what are you doing? Don't forget. I said when God sent you to earth, He sent you with your future trapped inside of you. Whatever it is that you need to do, it's already inside of you. Get it out. It's that important. I know I feel like I'm shouting over here like preaching. But get it out. It's already inside of you. Don't look outside. That's a problem that a lot of people have. We go to these self-help books and we look for all of this stuff. We go to psychics and tell us who we are and what. It's already inside of you. You're wasting your time. Instead of searching outward, look inward. Why am I here? When I think about my grandmother laying in that casket, I'm like, gosh, I hope and prayed that she knew what she was sent here for. I think it'll be sad to live this earth and to die never knowing why you were sent here in the beginning. It's important. I think it's important. And don't forget, it's more important how you treat people in your everyday life. What's your legacy? What are you leaving behind? How are you treating people? When you saw the old man crossing the street, did you stop? Or did you say, hurry up, I gotta go to work? One day I was driving to work. And I had to repent because I'm driving 25 miles per hour zone. I was driving about 35. And there were kids at the bus stop. And the guy says, he comes out, slow the blank down. You fill in the blank, right? He said, slow the blank down. And I pulled over. I said, sir, he said, there's kids out here. And I said, I am so sorry. I was so focused on going to work, getting there on time, that I didn't even think about the children going to school at the bus stop. From that day, I slowed down. And guess what? I never knew how beautiful my neighborhood was, because I was always rushing out of it. And then I'm like, wow, look at that. Oh, wow, look at their lawn. Then I'm like, okay, you're nosy now, stop it. Just focus, you know? So I had to, but think about how we go through everyday life. Think about it. That we don't even think about our parents. We're so worried about ourselves and our bills and how we're gonna do this and what I. It's not about you. It's not about you. Take the time out today, tomorrow, next week, call a senior citizen. Call somebody that you know. And also, people who have dementia have caregivers. These caregivers are breaking down. They are breaking down. Somebody called me the other day and she says, she's 26, she says, I think I'm having a stroke. The whole side of my face is dropped. And I'm like, you better get to the hospital. But I know, and I said, you need to let your family, everybody needs to pitch in. So if there's a family member of yours that's sick, everybody needs to pitch in, because the caregivers will break down. And if the caregiver breaks down, who's going to take care of the person who's sick and the caregiver at the same time? So if we bridge together, it can happen. It can really happen, and we could really change a world. We could really change the world if we changed our mind, our perspective. So with that being said, don't ever forget to pay homage to your seniors, because without them, we wouldn't be who we are today. So thank you for your time.
I should have taken Thumbelina's speaking class. I'm very nervous now. Thank you. So, hi, I'm Regina KASUN. I'm a nurse practitioner in Northern Virginia, DC suburb. So I've been a nurse for 30 years. For the past 10, I've been a nurse practitioner, predominantly caring for the frail elder. I've worked in nursing homes, assisted livings, and right now I work in a medical house calls program that cares for geriatrics with advanced illness. My career has been the fruit of a long journey. Often in high school we start off with all the wrong intentions, but it really leads you to the desire of your heart. I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York, and I decided to become a nurse solely because I thought I had the aptitude to complete the curriculum, and I wanted to travel. As a kid in high school, I wanted to get out of my one stoplight town. I wanted to join the Peace Corps and live in Peru, of all things. I can't even speak Spanish. I never made it to Peru, and I never joined the Peace Corps. But I have stuck with nursing. And like I said, it's been the fruit of a very long journey, but a very fruitful one. It was my own battle with breast cancer at 36, 37 years of age that was the impetus for me to become a nurse practitioner. Basically, I had to deal with failing health, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't be sick and do bedside nursing, it's too physical. So I went to school, and when I started in the nurse practitioner program, it was my goal, my desire to be in medical house calls. Even though I didn't really know what it entailed, it was just a desire I had. It took me about 6 or 7 years, and I finally ended up there. Well, it actually found me. And the funny thing is, it's a really physical job. So I go into like 6 different dwellings in a day. I drive in some of the worst traffic in the U.S. in the D.C. suburbs. I have to deal with inclement weather. I dress, my husband says it's dressing Amish because I'm covered like from here to here because you never know what you're going to deal with, so you have to have layers and everything else. And then I have to overcome all these obstacles before I even get to the front door. The workflow is very clunky, it's inconvenient, but I must say it's been the pinnacle of my whole career. I think predominantly because it rebalances the relationship with your patient. You know, my whole career it's always been my clinic, my hospital, and in the nursing home it's their residence, but it's so highly regulated they have very little freedom. You know, because they have several people cohabitating under one roof, they have certain rules and regulations. So anyway, when you go into someone's home, it puts the balance of power more on the patient-family side of things. It is clearly less about you, like you said, and more about your patient. And there's something really exciting when you're at your first, you know, you're meeting the patient for the first time and you're at their threshold and you're waiting for them to open the door and you don't know who you're going to meet or how they're, you know, and you see how they're living. So you don't know what the environment's going to be like, the people in it. So there is that anticipation. Behind these closed doors, there are a lot of heroes. And there is a lot of goodness that is virtually unknown to all of society. I say that, you know, it's all about my patient, but it really becomes all about me. Because the journey that I've had with my patients, they formed me. They've formed me professionally, and they've also been a huge formation in my faith. My patients, like what you learn in school, and it's so true, your patients are your best teachers. Like I said, geriatrics, I remember when I was going to school, and when I took my NP, you didn't have to become geriatric. You could be adult, family, and you could do an additional geriatrics. And I knew that I wasn't well suited with kids. You know, I think as a nurse you pick one. You pick either the adults or you pick the kids, typically. And so I felt like the training I had wasn't deep enough and I wanted to go deeper, so I did geriatrics. But they are your best teachers because they have advanced disease. And I remember when I was going to school, a resident, a physician that was in residency came up to me and said, "Why are you doing geriatrics? There's nothing to do. They're older, they're going to go." You know, and the contrary, there is so much to do because these people live very long and they have advanced diseases, and the treatment, there's not a lot of medical literature for people, you know, 85 and plus is most of my patients. So you really have to go deep into the science, but you also have to go deep on a human level. As a nurse, I never bought the quality of life argument that we should make decisions on patients' medical treatments based upon the results of their quality of life, especially since most of my patients are unable to communicate their values and preferences. How am I to know what their quality of life is? It is important to give guidance and medical evidence about likely outcomes, risks, and benefits of possible treatments and tests, and how it applies to each individual patient and their preferences. As a Catholic, I believe human life is sacred from conception to natural death. But I didn't really know how to communicate this or synthesize this until I went to an ethics conference with one of my friends at a local parish. And the priest said, "What makes us human isn't what we do. It's that we are made to be loved. It's that we are made to receive love. That's what makes us human." So my human value is not what I can do on a daily basis, but that I am made to receive love from other humans, right? So my patients, like I said, they're advanced age, they're frail, they have physical debility, cognitive debility, and most oftentimes they have both. They are so frail that they need someone to assist with their basic needs, such as bathing, dressing, toileting. It's stressful for them to go to outside appointments, and so that's how our program came into being. These people were being virtually lost to society until they came in for very long hospitalizations because they couldn't get to the doctor. Yet, I've witnessed that even in this stage of dependence, they are fruitful and generative. I feel like their physical and mental limitations, their suffering, help others who, with them, become better people. They become part of a great love. Their limitations generate those that are around them. And this is really true. You know, I have patients, several of my patients are bedridden. They can no longer speak. Smile is an end stage of dementia where they can no longer smile, or swallow nutrients. I had one female patient who was bedridden for 8 years before I met her. She had a stroke and she was cared for by her husband. And what happened is the husband developed some cognitive impairment and he could no longer care for her. And they had several children. And because of his great care, she lived very long. She had a tube feeding, as I said. She had several children. And so when he no longer was able to care for her children stepped in, and her sister. So my appointments with her were beautiful because at every appointment I was greeted by the husband, even though he was no longer the primary caregiver, he was always there. The sister, the youngest daughter, or the youngest child, which was a girl. So much so that the youngest daughter and her husband moved in to the same house to manage the care. They also had a lot of aides. They had 24/7 nursing care because of her needs. But the minute you walked into this home, there was a peace. And the whole rhythm of this home revolved around her. When I entered the home, I always addressed the husband and I said, "How is your bride doing?" Because it was so true that they had a great love. Even though she's tube fed, she doesn't speak. She just looks at you. She's still mother, wife, grandmother, sister. That's still there. And it was apparent with the way that they interacted with her. I got to know my patient very well, and from seeing her on a regular basis, though she couldn't speak, I could tell by looking in her eyes how she was doing. When she was sick, they would get this glassy look. When she was well, they were bright and she would track my movements. And she had the most beautiful hazel eyes. I could tell by the way she was laying in the bed. I could tell by the color of her skin. Well before me even putting a stethoscope on her. And it was because we had a great familiarity. I have some patients that are in hospice, that were in hospice and they were discharged from prolonged prognosis. And what we find sometimes is that when you shift the care from intensive medical treatment to comfort and symptom management, people live longer. Some people, not everybody, but a lot of my patients. I have one such patient who lives with her daughter and her daughter's family. She has advanced dementia and Parkinson's. She's bedridden. It's difficult for her to swallow. She's nonverbal. But her daughter makes a special diet, a special concoction, and spoon feeds her, you know, and because she does put nutrition into her lungs, but she's still able to be fed, and she hasn't died from any pneumonias. She's had pneumonias in the past, but she keeps living. And a lot of it is because of the great care that her daughter gives. Her daughter has 3 boys, a husband, a house to keep, and she sleeps next to her mother's bed, because she gets up and she cares for her at night. She does have an aide that comes in during the day, but she supplements the care. So I really don't know how she does it. So one day I was going to her house and she had these beautiful flowers. Like you said, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm creeping on people too, but you know, she had these beautiful flowers and I'm like, my gosh, these flowers are just so beautiful. And this lady's a character. She is very free. She's no nonsense, but she's just, you gotta chase her around because she's like all over the place. She's got this intense energy. And so I was complimenting her on her flowers. Here she's got this mother, these boys, you know, whatever. She takes me in the backyard. It's this huge flower garden. Most beautiful flower garden I've ever seen. I mean, I just really don't know how she does it. So even though, you know, you know, you always think that when you care on that level, that your life maybe isn't full, but your life is full. This woman's life is full, right? So not all of my patients have families that care for them. I have one patient, a gentleman who has a legal guardian because he has no relatives and he's unable to care for himself. He has several home health aides that give 24/7 care, and he's a real character. He has some cognitive impairment, but he's been very clear that he wants to die in his home. He doesn't want any more hospitals. When he doesn't want to do something, he gets really loud. Well, he's loud anyway. He'll yell at me, "No more hospital! No more hospital!" And I'm like, "Calm down, Mr. D. Let me just, I'm not going to send you." And then I had to draw blood on him because, you know, he's got really advanced disease and he was doing really well. Usually I come there, he's watching TV and he's got a glass of wine. I'm like, all right, you know, you can have a glass of wine, I don't care. I go, how is it? He goes, it's good. I'm like, all right. You know, but the other time I was just like, I got to get blood. I'm managing his medicines. I don't want him to be sick because I'm not paying attention. And he's like, what am I, a guinea pig? What am I, everybody's a guinea pig. And I'm like, Mr. D, I don't have to do it. Everybody's a guinea pig. But the caregivers and the care manager just adore him. And he's taken a turn for the worse, sadly. And the care manager came up to me and she said, you're going to have to give me a lot of support because when he starts to get really sick, I'm going to need a lot of support. This is really hard. Because you think that you don't get emotionally involved, but you're supposed to, you know? I think when you put your heart and soul into it, you know, you make the better decision. As opposed to stepping away. So basically, caring for this population is not for the faint of heart. Our patients have a limited life expectancy due to advanced age and illness. A majority of my patients are 80s or older with a substantial amount in their 90s and some in their hundreds. I just lost my 100-year-old. And she was great. She wasn't demented at all. She was a lady that was very, very wealthy. But she was no nonsense. She was like that era where it wasn't like, I think she was wealthy just out of happenstance. Like, I mean, it wasn't anything that she wore as a medal or whatever. It was just her, it was what she was given. And she wasn't, I knew she was wealthy because of where I visited her, right? But she was no nonsense, you know? And I would always be late for my appointments because her zip code, because I'm in the car, is my worst, and the traffic is ridiculous. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I know I'm late. And she's like, and I have time, you know? She's just like, come on. You know, or I'll say, well, you know, I'm not doing anything for her, right? And I'll say, you know, I'm really not, I don't want to fleece Medicare. I'll come back in 2 months. All right, if you think I'm going to be here, if you say so, you know. And sadly, you know, it was my, and she would have these awful, like, allergic reactions. Well, when you're 100, you know, and she'd say, well, what do you think this is? And I said, I don't know, you're 100. I'm like, how the heck do I know? And she would have, like, almost this anaphylaxis, you know, where her tongue would swell, her lips would swell, and I almost gave her an EpiPen, which can zip the heart. And before I did it, I called one of my colleagues, one of the docs. I said, you know, it sounds like anaphylaxis, and, you know, anybody else should have a EpiPen, but I give it to her, she's going to have a heart attack. And she's like, yeah, don't give it to her. So I took her off of medicine, and, you know, and her skin was dry. I go, well, you're 100. You're 100. Lather it up. I don't know. But she was great. I mean, this lady was great. And sadly, you know, we don't control our own destiny. she had a brain hemorrhage and ended up passing in the hospital. And the other thing about caregivers, you know, when I was in the nursing home, I had a lady come up to me. Her mother was in her 90s, and you know, in medicine, we want to be kind of antiseptic about things. You know, we want to, you know, fix the problem. If we can't fix it, we got to go to goals of care, and everybody's got to man up and be able to just proceed to the next step, right? And I had this one lady come up to me, and her mother was in her 90s, and so she's in her 70s, right? And she said, every moment of my existence, every beat of my heart, my mother was always there. She said, it doesn't make it easier the longer you have them, it makes it harder. She said, I am going to wake up one day and she's not going to be there. I mean, she's going to be there because, you know, but not going to be physically there. And so, you know, it makes you pause. So I can't really speak, so basically these people, I want to tell you some other things. So even though my patients, and I could go on to about their limited resources, like you said, their isolation, they exist, you know, and this total sense of dependence. I feel very poor in front of them, in front of their problems, in front of their illnesses. Just like Ray, my patient who was 100, I don't have an answer for her. Or my patients that are isolated, alone, they're suffering. You feel so small and so poor. But if it weren't for my faith, I would have burned out a long time ago. I've come to the conclusion that God loves them more than me. And this relationship and journey with my patients and those who care for them is really for me. And if I pay attention to those graces, actually, if I pay attention, I can see those graces. There was one patient encounter, it was the first time I met him, and he had severe dementia. He was they lose their verbal skills, you know, towards the end. And he really couldn't speak except some gibberish, so I'm going about my business, and I'm loud too, just like you. I'm like, you know, and sometimes with dementia they get a little like that because they don't have their depth perception. They're like, whoa. I have some of them that laugh at me too. They're like, oh, you know. So, you know, and so I'm going about my thing, and you know, he can't really speak. He's just kind of sitting there in a daze. And then all of a sudden I go to take his blood pressure and do an exam, and he looks at me very lucid, and he said, "You're a good woman." And then he's gone. And I'm like, thank you, I needed that today, you know. I had another instance when I was visiting a woman who was in a very challenging home environment. And I was experiencing some issues with her son who was having difficulty meeting her needs. And I didn't know what to do, and I said, God, you have to enter in, you know. And the other thing, when you're in someone's home, when things get out of hand, it can get really intense. Because, you know, you're used to being in a clinic, you have whatever, but when things get really, and they can just be so intense because these people are in crisis. And I was like, God, you know, you have to come because this is not good. There was a knock on the door. It was the Eucharistic minister bringing communion. And I was like, okay, you're here. So I guess I'm going to be okay, you know. And then when I was practicing in the nursing home, I had a patient with dementia. He was bedridden. He was estranged from his family. He was actually, before he came, and this guy was brilliant. He was a mathematician. He went to Berkeley. And he was the guy that developed the formulas for actuaries and for insurance companies, like with risk. Like, he developed the math for it. And here he is in this nursing home with nobody, bedridden. He had estranged wives and children. So he's totally alone. And one day on my rounds, he said, he told me he was born on August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption. And he wanted to pray a rosary. Well, the rosary, for those of you that don't pray, it's a long prayer. And my patient has cognitive impairment, not the greatest attention span. And I have many patients to see in the nursing home. But I did, right? And the whole time I'm like, oh boy, this might take very long. But miraculously, we did it very quickly. And every time the Feast of the Assumption comes, I think of him. So I can't speak about my maturation and self-awareness as a nurse practitioner, as a person, without speaking of a dearest friend who passed. I spent 5 years practicing in a 300-bed nursing home, predominantly geriatric, medically complex population, which included a ventilator unit. I worked for Mike, who was the medical director of the facility, and had been in this role for 25 years. Mike was a family practice physician, loved by his patients and respected by his colleagues. By the time I met him, he was in his 70s. He was like mid-70s, and when he passed, he was like 77. He had a lot of experience in practice and in life, and he had absolutely no hubris. Yet, he was current with his clinical practice, and he took it very seriously. We weren't of the same faith, but shared the same values, especially when it came to what it meant to be human. He was the epitome of joy, just like you. I mean, he was just so joyful and so bubbly, you know. He was just this presence that would fill up a space. And he always had a smile on his face, and he had an amazing sense of humor. He had a zest for life and taught me it's not about the rules, but the patient and the person. His patients were some of his best friends. He had practiced in the same town, and when he retired, he had a big party with some of his closest patients. He invited them. He taught me that compromise came from giving the other something. And I remember I would call with some big crisis in the nursing home, and he said, "You gotta figure it out. You gotta give them something. Think about it. You gotta give them something," you know? And he said all grievances with a coworker could be resolved by taking them out and sharing a good meal. I would have some of these people that would try to steamroll me, and Mike would say, "Why don't you take them out to lunch? I'll pay for it. Take them out to a real nice lunch." And I'm like, "I don't want to take them out to lunch, Mike. Take them out to lunch." And he was right. Everything was connected to the person. When you would call to consult on a patient, he wouldn't let you go onto your report or your clinic or your question. "I need a name. What's the name?" You know? And so you had to give him the name. And he always gave you a lot of affirmation, you know, positive affirmation. He would come up and he would say, "You're so great. You're so great." And then this other nurse practitioner, Michelle, he would say, "She is so smart. That Michelle is so smart." But he meant it, you know, he really meant it. And he had wonder in front of everyone in every circumstance. He had a curiosity. He was open to his patients. He taught me to listen to my patients, take the request seriously. Even if a request sounded outlandish, it always had a seed of truth. And what I take, and I'll close with this, what you were saying about the caregiver. I bring Mike's spirit, what I learned from him, and I think he's with me every day. I really do. And I also blame him for things too. Like, if you'd be around, I could call you right now. You know, show me something. You know, but I affirm my patients' caregivers because it is hard. And they are teetering on a fine line. And I had one couple, they're both in their mid to late 80s, and he's my patient, so is she. And he's frail too, but his wife has had a series of really bad hospitalizations. Her medical care at home, just to keep her comfortable, is very complex. And this guy is so exact and so disciplined with her care. He's amazing, and I complimented him on it. And I said, "You know, you're so good at this, and I just think you're doing really a very good job." And he was so appreciative, because they don't hear this. And the other things that I do is I treat the caregiver or the friend or the family and my patient as one unit. Nothing is perfect. It's not about perfection. And so I'll change medicines if one caregiver is getting worn out by being up all night. If I give somebody a medicine that's going to keep them up all night urinating because I give them a diuretic for heart failure. It's a serious thing. but the wife is up all night trying to care for him because he has to get up and go to the bathroom. So I change it to just the morning, and I add medicines, or I try to, and we always talk, this is not perfect, and I tell him it's okay. You know, and I need that too. I mean, before I had to give this talk, it's been one of my hardest weeks. And I'm like, they're going to think I'm some big phony. You know, I had one patient that said I was disorganized. Another one said I tried to kill her. You know, I'm like, oh, well, this is great. Now I got to talk about taking care of the elderly. And they think I'm a perpetrator or something. But really, the key is like with being a caregiver or being in this role as what we do, you have to have mercy for everything, because if you're scandalized with your behavior, you're going to walk away.
Yep.
And that's it.
So thank you again, Thumbelina and Regina, for sharing your stories with us. And before we turn it over to the audience, I'm going to ask a few questions of my own. So as I mentioned in the introduction, it seems as if our society tends to undervalue its members who are less productive or more vulnerable than others. And perhaps this is part of the reason why some families will immediately put their family members into nursing homes, and maybe even why there's an increasing demand for physician-assisted suicide. My question is, seeing as you both work so closely with the elderly on a day-to-day basis, how is this attitude affecting the daily lives of the elderly, and what can we do to challenge it? So whoever wants to start first.
Like I said before, a lot of my patients' families, they value, they don't want them in the nursing home. They want to do as much as they can, but they suffer from severe isolation. Because the caregiver is tied to the home, they can't get out because the family member needs so much, or the patient, or my patient, or your resident, or whatever, so that they feel a lot of isolation. So there's a lot of great things going on in the home, but they're by themselves. I think, like you said, community is so important.
Absolutely.
And I have a lot of patients that have one foot on a banana peel, but they're able to stay at home because of their neighbors, or the other thing is, I think the biggest thing is isolation, social isolation. You know, they bring joy, but if you're not exposed to them, you're not going to know. And you're going to be afraid too, you know, because your own mortality is tied up into seeing somebody age.
Yeah. And not just isolation, but depression. You know, for me, I feel like I solve a problem of a common problem of senior depression. Depression is serious. It's not just the youth that's depressed, it's the seniors, you know. So that ties into what you said as well. So I would say isolation and depression.
Thank you. My other question, you know, a lot of people here, including myself, are facing how to support elderly family members, whether it's grandparents, aunts, or uncles. And while there are numerous resources available, whether it's adult daycares, you know, services that visit seniors in their home, these efforts can be emotionally and financially trying. It can become exhausting after a while. So what course of action or what practical advice do you have for those family members who are trying to understand how they can be available to their elderly family members? What can we do? Where can we start in this process?
Okay, as you can see from my tactic, I use simple. I use what we have. I don't go out of resources, because sometimes I don't go to my resources at first. I go within, as you guys heard me say. I go within. What could I do personally first before you go to get that care? Because sometimes, you know, they said a happy heart is like a medicine, or laughter. Laughter that's healing. It's therapeutic when you laugh and you crack jokes, and you know, that's therapeutic right there. So I think that small support, like starting small, it's good. Before you go to going online and looking at your resources, starting within first. What could I do to make this person happy? What could I say? Taking them to the dollar store, playing a card game with them, it helps the depression, and it helps the isolation, and it helps a lot of things. But I say small support first, and then you go to like her.
I agree, yeah. And I also think, you know, my husband and I, we don't have kids, you know, and I think, I live in Northern Virginia, but most of my sport's in upstate New York, New York City, but New York City isn't for the old, I'm sorry. I can't even do it at my age, I couldn't do it at 20, you know. But so you know, so I think concretely you have to start thinking and having a conversation. You know, I told you that one story, I had a patient whose daughter was amazing, and my patient was in her mid to late 90s by the time she ended up in an assisted living, a beautiful assisted living. But in order to stay there, she had to sell her house. And the mother wanted to go back to the house. The daughter thought she was doing everything that the mother wanted, and it came to the house being sold, and the mother was very upset with her. And she said, you know, I really don't care about longevity. I'm in my late 90s, I just want to pass it home. It wasn't that simple because she required a lot of care and there were a lot of moving parts, and 24/7 care in your home is a lot more expensive than an assisted living, and eventually she decided to stay in the assisted living. But, you know, just having those talks. Goals of care is really another big talk, like, you know, if, you know, what you or who you want to make decisions for you. Like, you know, if you have a lot of family members, everybody has different opinions on how things should go. So finding somebody that you think is most in line or is going to represent you, not theirs, but that could speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. That's a huge one.
Thank you. So we have about 10 more minutes for any questions from the audience. If you can just raise your hand and speak loudly so we can hear you up here. Rose.
Thank you both so much. So in my family, most recently when my grandparents, like I had 3 grandparents pass away in the last few years, and especially with one of them, my mom's mother, as she started to get more sick and need a lot more care, it just brought so much tension and strife into the family, and eventually, like, many relationships were permanently ruined and amongst my mom and her siblings, and it's really, really broken situation now. And I'm just wondering, like, my siblings and I have talked about this a lot, because we're like, we don't want to repeat this, you know, when our parents are dying. And I'm just wondering, like, both of you, from your perspective, like, what do you suggest as far as, like, how to stay focused on what's actually important during that time, because it does bring out kind of like everybody's most broken qualities, and you know,
I think that everybody should have a plan. I'm a big planner. I believe in taking care of business. I believe if you could sit down with a parent early, tell them to tell us what you want. There's no confusion, there's nothing. If you plan early enough, like you guys are in a position where you can plan early to say, what would you like? If this was to happen, but everybody, I think like when it comes to death and sickness, a lot of people shy away from those conversations, and that's the wrong thing to do. I remember when my husband Dave was passing, right? They said that he had 3 months and to live, and I remember he had a feeding tube, and he didn't want any of that stuff. He was 52 years old. And I remember my kids, everybody in the house, when is he going to die today? What are we? And I'm like, I'm sick of this cancer stuff. What's going on? I was so annoyed that we're letting cancer run our lives. It's destroying my home. And I said, no. I said, Dave, listen, the kids are going to have a conversation with you. He goes, well, what do you want me to do? I said, whatever they ask you, you give them the answer of whatever it is you're feeling. That's it. It liberated him to go. It liberated me as the other parent who was like, then the kids are like, my son was 7 at the time, and he said, Daddy, are you going to D? He's like, what's D, buddy? He's like, die. He goes, I don't know. But just in that, it's like, oh, well, let me know if you know, like if you ever find out. But it was good because everybody in the room was like, oh, you know. So then I started, instead of me going and caring for him and just, hey, Friday is your day to my daughter, Sunday's your day to my son and the baby. Get daddy cans of food to feed him. Everybody has to take a part in it. It's not just me. I'm not going to sit here and hold all of this pain and try to carry everybody's weight. I think that's a huge problem. People want to carry the weight. You can't. Somebody has to open it up. And then you might have a family member who says, I don't want to talk about it. Well, we don't have a choice. But if you get the leader, which is your parents, to say, hey, we have to have a meeting. Let's sit down and let's talk about it. You could be the moderator or the person who's writing down everything, but I believe in having a written plan, having something on paper showing this is what we're going to do if you ever got sick. We don't want to have this mess. We want peace and harmony. Mom, wouldn't you want that for us? Wouldn't you want? Communication is key. Communication is everything in business and life and relationships with your children, spouses. Communication is key. So my suggestion to you is communication, and do it as soon as possible.
I believe everything she said. Seriously.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, more than a question, I would like to give a kind of witness of an experience that I had with my aunt that passed away a few years ago. Because it helped me to understand personally the real value, the real objective value of whoever is in any type of condition. So I was here, anytime I came here many years ago. So I was here and I was listening to the even fast falling apart of my aunt through, there was my mom's sister, and my mom was very, very attached to her, and since when I was a kid, was important for me too, but then, you go away and you almost forget about her. So all of a sudden I hear, in 2 or 3 weeks, my mom saying, and this is failing, this is failing, this is failing, this is failing. I mean, so bottom line, she arrived to a point, and my mom was really ready at this point to let her go, was 10 years older, that, there was nothing to do. It was just, they take out everything. She was in the hospital, she could not communicate at all, was in deep coma, whatever, and they were waiting that she could pass away any hour. So she stayed in that condition, believe it or not, for 4 weeks.
Wow.
4 weeks. And my mom, every single day, she would call me and she was asking me, but what's the value? She's suffering. Why she doesn't die? She's really, why God does not take her away? And this is a question that, I'm here busy, and I couldn't answer. I said, yeah, actually, what's the value? I mean, she keeps going suffering, and she's nothing. She's just a piece of meat on a bed, okay? There, with no care, nothing, just waiting and she doesn't die. So I had this amazing final revelation, and I said, oh my God, never in her or life my aunt could witness to the fact that it's God in charge, that in this very moment. Because nobody, if you let her go, nobody can decide. Nobody.
Yep.
And in that very moment, myself, after 5 years, I still remember with a lot of thankfulness to my aunt for the pure fact that even if she was a nothing, for the pure fact that she didn't die, she was giving witness to the fact that nobody was in charge of it.
Right.
So at that point, I understood the profound objective value of someone, even if it is a dead body not yet dead.
Right.
So that because it really gives glory to the fact that no one is the owner of the life.
That's
And then
right.
she passed away. But after 5 years, if I have to remember something about my aunt, and I wanted to give, I never spoke about it, and I wanted to give witness tonight,
Nice.
was precisely, the fact that she was saying, God is in charge,
Right.
nobody else. And that was the most beautiful thing, I think, for
Yeah.
which I wanted to remember her,
Yeah.
And she has no guilt, no responsibility, no merit, for the pure fact that she was obeying to the, and you know, the people around her obeying the fact that, hey, nobody decide when you pass away. Someone else is in charge.
Just hearing you say that, it puts me in the mind of the Alpha and Omega. He's the beginning and the end. That's a beautiful thing to have in your mind. Like, he's the beginning and the end. And I love that you said that nobody's in charge but him. And it's until people get that in their mind, the thick skull that we have, because it's we, it's never about you. He has full control of everything, and that was a prime example of it. So thank you for that.
Any other questions before we close?
I just want to tell a quick story. You, Mom? Go ahead.
No, go.
Girl, you go, girl.
I want to hear your story.
Oh, well, when another thing too I wanted to say, sometimes we have to let people go. Being selfish is it's ego. Operating out of that ego, that lower self. Letting people go is, a lot of time people stay around that have been ready to go because you're not ready. You know why you're not ready? Because you're selfish. Sometimes we have to learn how to stop being so selfish and let people go. I remember when Dave, we had hospice in the house, and I came upstairs and the nurse looks at me like, you need to, I said, did he pass away? And she's like, no, he hasn't spoken in days. So she said, he's talking. So I said, hi. I called him Poopy. Hi, Poopy. I said, what's going, and I'm, the way you see me today is how I was for real, like the whole entire time. And he's like, I'm ready to go home. I said, you are home. He said, no, babe, I want to go home. I said, to be with the Lord? He said, yes, I just want to rest. I said, when those angels come for you, you better fly high and don't you look back. And I said, God has everything here under control. Go for it. And sometimes I feel like people need that release. Don't sit here waiting for me and the kids. Go, be happy. And I'm like, I remember one day I was just telling Kevin in the car, he said, I know I'm going to die. I said, what's your gripe? We all going to die. And he says, well, I don't want that little boy to stop believing in God. I said, use the power that you have now to tell him about him and how he is and how much you love him. And I said, are you afraid? He said, no. I said, get excited. You know why? Because you are about to see the face of God. Get excited about it. So you see how I changed the perspective. I changed the perspective of death. It's not something scary. We're all bound to go. Where you go is how you live. What's your legacy? We talked about it. Sorry, go ahead, Mary.
How do you, I don't know, deal with families who make the decision to have a family member in a nursing home or assisted living, and it seems like they carry shame? People have to feel like they're apologizing or rationalizing the decisions. Do you have any thoughts or feeling?
You know, Mike, the guy that I talked about, the doctor, he had no, he was not a moralist at all. He was one of the freest people I've ever met. He had, you know, he was just something. That's ego too, right? Yeah. When you're, you know, sometimes you can't do it. And sometimes I'm saying to people, your dad was found outside again at midnight. You know, when people wander, especially with dementia, when they wander, that's very dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so you know, and sometimes they run, and you know the other person can't catch them. You know, it's you do what you can do. You know, you do what you can do. Mm-hmm. That's a moralistic view, because I have a lot of patients in nursing homes. My aunt passed in a nursing home. She had a glioblastoma, and she came to a nursing home a mile and a half away from my house because my two other aunts were there, and then my mom came up because she wanted to be with her sisters. So my Aunt Regina was there every day. Most people in nursing, not most, some, you know, so it's not the place necessarily. It's you have to do what you can do. But there's sacrifice in everything, though.
And think about guilt. Where does that stem from? I feel, I hurt, I ego. Let it go. because you did what you have to do. Sometimes, like Regina and I both talked about it, the caregivers, they catch hell a lot of times because it's too much, the weight, it will break you down if you don't have a support system. And sometimes the only support is to put them in a home. As selfish as it may sound, you have to put them away sometimes, and there's nothing you could do about it. But the guilt becomes, I did this, I should not. You have to drop the guilt, because that's where ego comes in. I'm telling you, if we would sacrifice ego, the world would be a better place. You have a question, Randy?
Yeah, my dad just passed about 6 months ago. He was 87, and it's interesting. I'm a convert. I'm the only religious person in my family. The rest are atheists. But what you were saying, I was really moved. What kept our family together was my mom. Because you know, when you're a son, my father would call, complain about my mother would call, complain about my. And it always seemed like they were wrestling so hard. He just retired, so they were living together for the first time. So all that stuff was going on. So, but it was amazing because, like you said, you could tell what a real love is. A real love between my mother and him, because when she was the one who knew how to let him go. I couldn't, with all my religion and faith, I couldn't do it. Right. But my mother, because she loved him. Right. She had no ego, even with all the fighting, all these things that you say, But I remember her holding his hand when he couldn't have consciousness. It was like a gaze I don't have, with all my faith. And she was free, so she was the one who could make all the decisions. The family just followed her. You know what I mean? That's what I'm telling, and that was amazing. So I began to see that these aged people speak of a presence of something bigger than themselves, whether they believe or not. Absolutely. Their life speaks it. Absolutely. And that type of freedom, she was the one who could let him go. The children couldn't do it. She did it. But she said, stop. It's time. She knew her limits. She didn't have, she knew what the family could handle, not family. So we had the confidence of a peaceful transition because of her. And she doesn't believe. Wow.
He talks about faith and, tests and trials, all of the stuff that we go through, the ups and downs, they come to grow our faith. But this is one of my favorite sayings about faith. A faith that has not been tested cannot be trusted. Remember that. A faith that has not been tested cannot be trusted. God cannot trust you with the next level if I can't test it. So every time there's a season where you're being tested, know that comes to grow your faith. Miriam, it comes to grow your faith. Sometimes it's not about the person who's in the nursing home. Sometimes it is about you, because that's the lesson for you. A faith that has not been tested cannot be trusted.
And anybody can teach it to you, not just people with
Absolutely.
People who love.
Love, exactly. That's good too. Absolutely.
Love that makes you free.
That liberation, right? Yeah.
One of the younger members in here tonight. You were talking about planning. It's very difficult to really make a plan, because you can talk about it and plan, but you don't know what the next step is going to be. Because I have my fiancée of 59 years, and she has dementia, and I have different other elements, and still it's very difficult because you don't know what's the next step is going to be, what is going to come next to you, and that you will have to decide. And how do you try to make a decision on that basis?
I think the thought of it is always scarier than actually facing it. It's almost like you got to step out of the fear, and it's almost like fear is not of God, faith is. So when you step out of fear, you activate faith. So in order for you to go to the next step, which is scary to you, that's where faith has to be activated. Go ahead.
I'm not scared about it. Is that the unknown, it really makes you wonder how I'm going to be able to tackle this. And no matter how much you think about it and you decide I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, things don't really work the way you're thinking.
Change your perspective. You might have to change perspective and say, instead of me worried about the unknown and what's going to happen, when it gets here, we'll figure it out. Change it. And it sounds harder than what it actually is, but it's almost like embracing it. Here, it is what it is. You embrace it almost, if that makes sense, you know?
I always embrace it and I say, well, whatever it's going to be, it's going to happen. But I always think not of myself or the person that is going to decide for me. I worry about that because it's going to be very hard for them to decide.
Could be. But
how do I give the message to them that they don't have to worry about it and
the same way you're giving it to us now, you give it to them. It's just as simple and clear as that. Tell the person now, listen, I know I'm going to go. This is embracing it. Instead of saying, I'm not going to talk about it. If it happens, they're just going to have to deal with it. No. Listen, I'm going to be dying. And I know I'm not going to, I don't have another 5 years. I don't have another 20 years. So listen, I want you to know whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Don't make it hard. I'm giving you permission. Give them permission now. It makes it so much better later. Give people permission. Give them permission to die. Give them the permission to put you away. Give them permission ahead of time. That's why pre-planning is important. You give the caregivers and the family permission. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's join me in thanking Thumbelina and Regina one more time.